The conservatives didn't have an artist that maybe they liked, so instead of just saying, okay, not our day, let's go do something else.
The conversation didn't just heat up, it snapped in a way no one saw coming. And what viewers thought would be another routine panel discussion slowly turned into something far more intense. At least according to the clips now circulating online where people claim the shift happened. So subtly that many didn't even notice it until it was too late. It began with a question that sounded harmless on the surface. One of the panelists leaning back in his chair with a tone full of skepticism, saying that it was just entertainment and asking why everything had to become political. Abby listened without interrupting.
For weeks, conservatives complained about the choice of Bad Bunny as the performer, and President Trump predictably says he was not impressed. He called it, quote, absolutely terrible, one of the worst ever, and an affront to American greatness. But you didn't hear Bad Bunny mention ICE, he didn't mention immigration. Instead, he celebrated his Puerto Rican roots, and he ended the show by marching out to a parade of flags with these words on the big screen: the only thing more powerful than hate is love. Now, before spiking the football at the end, with these 4 words emblazoned on it, it said, together we are America. Well, heartwarming, right? I don't know. I mean, I guess this whole thing has been perplexing to me. I mean, conservatives, I'm sure they don't like a lot of the halftime performers, but popular music is popular music. And if you don't like it, just go watch something else.
Yeah,
don't complain about it.
Plenty of things you could be doing instead. I didn't find it super objectionable in comparison to previous halftime shows. It was pretty much equal level of outrage, except there wasn't any outrage, if you want to call, provocative dancing. That was probably the maximum that you could really muster. As far as the America is not great criticism from Trump, maybe he took the Bad Bunny line about, everything is America, or, God bless America, and then he lists like all of the Latin American and Central American countries. But honestly, I don't think that's objectionable either, because I think what that is just a unifying message. And I think most Americans just took it at its artistic performance value, which was family-friendly, actually family-focused.
There was a wedding that happened.
One of the biggest performers in the world. 3 of the top 10 songs are his. He's an incredible international performer. America, he's a part of America, right? He's Puerto Rican, he's a part of America. This was an opportunity to introduce that part of the culture to a lot of people who never saw it before. I think he did it in a phenomenal way. He made sure the background of Puerto Rico was displayed. It was a chance for us to learn about America and our fellow Americans, and it really should be no controversy.
I mean, first of all, it was really just a fantastic show.
Oh, I was so happy.
It was like watching a movie set, as he moved through the entire show. But we also are having all of this anxiety about whether or not it was American. We've had U2, we've had Celine Dion, we've had Coldplay. We've had a lot of international acts with people who literally were not Americans, and nobody cared.
I think 2 things are true at the same time. Number one, I think the conservatives, some of whom are saying this was the worst thing in the world, including the president, I completely disagree. It wasn't the worst thing. It's also not the best Super Bowl halftime show we've ever seen. Some of the praise of it has been over the top to also make political points. And to your point, there were a lot of people who did leave and didn't watch. They watched Kid Rock, which was also something that was happening at the time. They competed really well, I think, given it was a YouTube-only event. And Kid Rock was mocked, and conservatives were mocked for doing that. So they did do what you said.
It was bad lip syncing.
Only because it was kind of like
it was a response.
The conservatives didn't have an artist that maybe they liked, so instead of just saying, okay, not our day, let's go do something else. There's a lot of insulting happening of the Super Bowl. Jake Paul says, turn off this halftime show, or a fake American citizen performing who publicly hates America. I cannot support that. Kid Rock, this is today. Here's what he said about the Super Bowl halftime production.
Nothing against Jay-Z. I respect him for his hustle and his music, but it seems like there's a little bit of a DEI hire there going on.
I don't know. I mean, that's the stuff.
And that's it can't be about his music.
I mean, I mean, if you want to put DEI on the table, right? If this is about merit, I mean, Jay-Z and his career runs laps around Kid Rock.
Oh, yeah.
So what are we even talking about here?
And
It
even
seems like cultural resentment. And it doesn't
it's the reactionary culture that I think is so insufferable to so many Americans. And if you want to really take the Kid Rock lyrics, you want to take the Bad Bunny lyrics, I mean, come on, it's like a whole nother level. And that's coming from a conservative who's like, this is outrageously
there was a
vulgar.
piece of Kid Rock's lyric where he's talking about underage girls that was highlighted a couple days ago.
And the thing about, you didn't have to speak Spanish to know what he was saying, right? And it was so joyful. It was so upbeat. It was so young kids and people getting married and, iconic.
But even if it wasn't, you don't like the music.
I didn't know what he was saying. I didn't hate
But
the
even if it
performance.
wasn't, you don't like the music, it doesn't make it un-American. One, America doesn't have a national language, right? And so if he spoke Spanish, he spoke Spanish. He's Puerto Rican, he speaks Spanish and Puerto Rican.
It should be an event that
but
brought
imagine
people
being so
together.
bigoted that you think, I don't like this music, so it's un-American.
Right. Well,
Imagine
I don't
being
think
so
he
bigoted
said.
that
I
you
don't think
think-
Bad Bunny set himself up for success, though. He tainted his future performance by his anti-ICE activism that nobody asked for.
Or he elevated his stature.
He
Or
set
he
himself up for
elevated
success by
himself.
being the
it's-
top-selling artist right now in the world. He has
But
3
that's why
songs in
so
the
many
top 10.
Americans, I think,
That's why he
tuned
was in the
out. They
Super Bowl.
tuned out because they anticipated an anti-law enforcement screed when they would have just
didn't
wanted a
happen.
performance, which didn't happen.
Which didn't happen.
You're right,
So
but that's why you don't
why
use
the
that stage
continued
for that.
hatred of him.
And they had
And by the
great
way, Kid
radio.
Rock,
No,
Kid-
honestly,
it
Kid
didn't
Rock
happen.
just did an
I was
anti-woke screed, right? Right when they had
Yes,
the
and
conversation.
he's getting criticized by the left
You
for
were
it.
Because the
saying-
artists
you were
are able
saying
to
that there
be able to
is
say what they want.
resentment. What do you mean by that?
I think the left has had control over entertainment for a while, and we just haven't seen conservative values at this, exposed to the same level. We just haven't. And part of that is, outside of country music, you don't have a whole lot of outspoken conservatives in media. We just don't have in entertainment media. We don't.
But
And I
isn't
think
that
that
like
Her expression calm but focused, and that silence alone made the moment feel heavier because it encouraged others to keep talking and reveal more of what they were really thinking. Another panelist quickly jumped in, more assertive this time, saying people were tired of everything being turned into a political statement. And for a brief second, it looked like the conversation would follow the same predictable pattern everyone had seen before. But then Abby leaned forward slightly and asked in a steady voice who actually decides what counts as political. And that single question landed harder than anyone expected because you could see a flicker of hesitation cross their faces as they tried to respond. One of them attempted to regain control by saying that when someone uses a platform to push certain messages, it naturally becomes political. But Abby calmly followed up by pointing out that when those messages align with their beliefs, they are treated as opinions. But when they don't, they suddenly become a problem. And just like that, the tone shifted completely as one of the panelists shot back defensively, saying that was not what he meant. While Abby responded without raising her voice that it was exactly what he implied. From that moment on, the conversation crossed into something deeper, something more personal. And viewers later said this was where everything began to unravel because emotions ran high and it stopped feeling like a discussion and started looking like a clash. One panelist leaned forward with visible frustration, arguing that there is a difference between influence and manipulation, and that people were starting to see through it. But Abby quickly countered by suggesting that maybe people were simply listening to voices they felt represented them. And that response seemed to trigger something because another voice jumped in loudly asking, "Since when celebrities represent every day?" People. Abby turned toward him calmly and said that it happens when people feel like they are not being heard elsewhere. And for a brief moment, the room fell silent. Not for long, but long enough to make the tension undeniable. Even behind the scenes, the production team could sense that this was no longer a routine exchange.
finally came out and said, I'm not comfortable speaking out as a conservative. And I think we have going on right now with Nicki Minaj, who's getting attacked over this very
artists
issue.
don't speak out about politics. They're
One way or the other.
successful.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
They're
agree.
successful on
Yeah,
their
that's the
fandom,
point.
on whether
And
people
Bad
love their
Bunny
music,
wasn't
whether
chosen
they
for
are
his
producing
policies.
things that are
Correct.
good.
But there's
So
a
I mean,
bullying
when
culture.
I don't believe that any artist should be judged on their politics. But if it is, in fact,
Depends
that
on the politics.
right-leaning artists are just simply not producing the art that people want to consume, isn't that just merit?
No,
Playing
because
itself
whether
out?
or not someone feels
Because they're not
comfortable
allowed to be
speaking
right.
out in
I'm
favor of
talking
their
about putting
conservative
aside.
values.
I'm talking about
Change because the energy felt raw and unpredictable. And when one panelist muttered that she was giving too much credit to entertainers, Abby responded immediately by saying they were underestimating the audience. A line that later spread across social media, with fans calling it one of the strongest moments of the segment. For a moment, no one spoke. And the usual rhythm of interruption broke down. But then things escalated again when one panelist raised his voice saying people were being influenced without realizing it, and that it was dangerous, prompting Abby to ask a simple but sharp question about who exactly it was dangerous for. And when he replied that it was dangerous for the country, She leaned back and questioned whether it was actually dangerous to certain narratives instead. That is when the conversation really started to fall apart as accusations of twisting words were thrown around, while Abby maintained her composure and insisted she was only asking for clarity. And the calmer she remained, the more frustrated. The others seemed to become as voices overlapped and the discussion turned. Chaotic. One panelist tried to regain control by saying the real issue was a lack of accountability. But Abby immediately asked what kind of accountability he meant. And when he said accountability for the messages being pushed, she responded by saying that then all messages should be examined, not just the ones people disagree with. A statement that later sparked massive reactions online as many viewers felt it exposed a deeper bias in the conversation inside the studio. The tension continued to build as another panelist, who had been quieter until that point, finally spoke up in a calmer tone, suggesting that she was making it sound like there was some kind of imbalance. And when Abby asked directly if there wasn't, he hesitated for a moment before denying it. But that brief hesitation said more than his words ever could. Viewers at home later described this part as uncomfortable to watch, because it felt too real, as if something had been exposed that could not easily be hidden again. And fans were shocked because the usual talking points no longer seemed to work, and the discussion had moved into unfamiliar territory. Then came a moment that would later dominate online conversations when Abby said in a softer but more impactful tone that maybe the real issue was people being uncomfortable when they were no longer the only ones being
music, on the art, on the acting.
But do you think that there is closer to a 50-50 in artists who are conservative versus liberals, or do you think that?
No, you're missing the point. Bad Bunny wasn't chosen because of his politics. He was chosen because he's a good artist. He just happened to have views you don't agree with.
Oh, 100%.
That's nothing to do with it.
Yes, no one here is
so you acknowledge he's talented, right?
Of course he's talented. I don't think he was chosen for his politics necessarily. I do think it was chosen in the context of the political world that we're now living in.
Chosen for the Super Bowl specifically?
Yeah, you're highlighting.
But I'm talking about the fact that he is one of the most, if not the most popular musician on the planet.
Right now.
That was before he was talking about ICE, before he was talking about any of this stuff.
Yes, but they were also concurrent because he was also going after ICE. He's been going after ICE for a while.
This was before Donald Trump was president.
Yeah.
Before ICE. Bad Bunny was a massive music star globally.
Yes.
And that has nothing to do with
the reason why he got on the attention of conservatives who expressed some reservations was because of his political stances in a context in which conservative viewpoints generally not put on display.
You're right that that's the reason that conservatives started paying attention to him. That is not the reason that he is a massive star.
Yeah,
he is a massive star.
I don't know anyone's
You're right. The reason he was actually chosen is because Roger Goodell wants the NFL to go global, and he wants to expand into the Latin America markets.
Bingo.
That's why he's chosen.
That's capitalism.
Right.
ones being listened to. And once again, no one responded immediately as the panelists sat there with expressions that reflected frustration, disbelief, and something harder to define. One of them finally said it was not fair, but it sounded more like a reaction than an argument. And when Abby calmly asked which part was unfair, there was no clear answer, only silence. And in that silence, everything shifted because the energy in the room changed completely, and what had started as a debate about culture and influence turned into something much more personal. It was no longer about Bad Bunny or even politics in the way it had been framed at the beginning. It became about who gets to speak and who actually gets heard. And as the cameras kept rolling and the tension refused to settle, one thing became impossible to ignore. The conversation was no longer being controlled by anyone else and had taken on a direction that none of them seemed fully prepared for. And that was the exact moment when the atmosphere inside the studio stopped feeling like a debate and started feeling like something far more unpredictable. Almost like everyone present realized at the same time that the conversation had slipped beyond their control, at least according to the reactions now spreading online. The panelists who had entered with confidence now seemed more cautious, their expressions tighter, their words more calculated, as if every sentence carried a risk they hadn't anticipated. Abby, on the other hand, remained steady, her posture unchanged, her tone still measured. And that contrast only made the tension more visible. One of the panelists cleared his throat, attempting to reset the tone. He leaned forward slightly and said that maybe the conversation was being taken too far, that it was supposed to be about cultural impact and not about turning everything into a larger ideological battle. His voice was calmer than before, but there was a hint of strain in it, like he was trying to regain ground that had already shifted. Abby listened again, giving him space to finish, and then responded in the same controlled manner, saying that cultural impact and ideology are often connected whether people want to admit it or not. That response didn't sit well. Another panelist quickly jumped in, his voice sharper than before, saying that this kind of framing was exactly why discussions like this spiral out of control, because everything gets interpreted through a political lens. He gestured with his hands as he spoke, his frustration now visible. And for a moment, it looked like he was trying to rally the others back to his side. People just want to enjoy things without being told what it means, he added. Abby nodded slightly, but her reply came with a quiet intensity. She said that people are already interpreting things on their own. And the idea that they are being told what to think assumes they don't have the ability to form their own opinions. That line seemed to land in a different way, because it shifted the focus from the public figures being discussed to the audience itself. That's not what anyone is saying, one of them responded quickly. But his tone lacked the confidence it had earlier. Then what are you saying? Abby asked, her voice calm but direct. Again, there was a pause. It wasn't long, but it was enough to make the exchange feel heavier than it should have been. Viewers later pointed out that these pauses became just as important as the words themselves, because they revealed hesitation, uncertainty, and in some cases, discomfort. Fans are shocked. Many wrote because the usual rhythm of debate had broken down completely and been replaced by something slower, more revealing. One panelist finally spoke up again, trying a different angle. He said that the real concern wasn't about who gets to speak, but about the influence certain figures have without being held accountable for the consequences of their words. His tone was more measured now, almost careful, as if he had learned from the earlier exchanges. Abby leaned slightly forward, her eyes focused. She acknowledged the point, but then added that influence exists in many forms, not just the ones people choose to criticize.